This is a biblical worldview on how to do business. But if you don't subscribe to the biblical worldview, this is just good business. And if there's a huge distinction between business people who follow Jesus and those who don't, I think it's this verse. I could be wrong about a lot of stuff. I just don't think so, or I wouldn't think that way. You can't judge me. Do not judge, lest you be judged.
This is a trophy I got for solo acting. 6th place.
You never water down the truth so that people aren't offended.
All right.
What up?
What up? How you feeling today?
I'm good.
A little better?
I'm feeling better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Not as... What, you're just a little frustrated yesterday?
Yeah, I don't know what it was about yesterday, but things were getting on my nerves.
Gotcha. It reminds me of a story.
Yeah?
Yeah. You want to hear it?
Well, yeah.
Okay, great.
Now that you've primed the pump, let's hear it.
All right. So there's this 6th grade teacher that was asked in the class, we have a story that has a moral to it. None of the kids raise their hands. And so she's about to tell her own story when a little kid raised his hand. She's like, okay, Jimmy, tell us your story. It's
always Jimmy.
Timmy. It's always Timmy. Jimmy does work, but yeah.
Yeah.
I had to change it to Jimmy.
Okay.
In protest. It is true.
Or Johnny. Little Johnny is often the culprit.
Yeah, little Johnny. But, Johnny Depp changed that. Big boys can be Johnny too.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's my goal for my life is
to make Timmy a big boy name?
Yeah. Big boys can be Timmy too. Anyway, so Jimmy tells a story, and he's like, well, there's this bird that's flying through the air, and his wings get really cold, so cold, in fact, that they freeze, and he falls to the ground. And it looks like he's going to freeze to death. But then a cow walks by, takes a poop on this bird, and the bird is just laying there thinking, oh, this is just my luck, right? But then the bird realizes that the heat of the poop begins to defrost his wings and is essentially saving his life. So he's overjoyed and starts singing. And then a cat comes along, hearing this bird sing, and digs the bird out of the poop and eats him alive. And the teacher goes, oh my goodness, what's the moral to this story? And he goes, well, my dad said that, number one, not everybody that shits on you is your enemy. Number two, not everybody that digs you out of shit is your friend. And number three, if you're in deep shit, keep your mouth shut. Is that a great story?
It's quite a story. Yeah.
Any thoughts on the moral?
I got a text. This is a great setup for today's topic because I got a text from somebody yesterday that gave me the idea of the episode. And here's the text. Faith in business is a topic I want to hear about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So thanks for
text.
that story setting up this topic.
Yeah.
Seeing how that text came from you.
That's right.
Yesterday.
Shout out to me.
Mm-hmm. Nice job.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, cool. Well, welcome to Commercially Speaking. I'm Timmy Barron, ADHD.
And I'm Bo Barron, CCIM.
And Bo's teaching me everything about commercial real estate. This is episode number 60-something.
Mm-hmm.
We're number 60, so I've learned quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible.
And so today's episode, in some ways, was set up by a couple episodes ago when we had our dad on the podcast, which was awesome fun to have him in here. And he talked a lot about his story, which includes, him coming to faith and how that changed the way he did business and so we talked about that a little bit, but, faith has been a big part of this company for a long time. And I thought we'd talk about it. So not so much about commercial real estate today, but more about how do you do business in a way that honors God?
Yes.
And how can you do it in today's society where, frankly, society tends to be fairly hostile to Christianity or God or Jesus or, however you want to frame that.
Right.
And so as I was thinking about this over the last 24 hours, there's nothing wrong with Jesus and there's nothing wrong with the gospel.
Yeah.
It's people.
Wait, what is people?
Like the the gospel is lived out through imperfect people.
Yes.
If you've ever been to church and you had a problem, there was drama or something went wrong that kind of turned you off or whatever, I can guarantee it had to do with the people.
Gotcha. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you might listen to this episode and think, well, Bo is putting himself out there as this ideal Christian or whatever. No, I'm an imperfect person who tries to follow a perfect God.
Right.
And so any of these things that we talk about in this episode, I kind of just want to mention the fact that I don't do this perfectly all the time.
Yeah.
I don't do this well all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm always trying to grow in these things. So whether you're listening and you're thinking, man, I'm not really interested in this episode because it has to do with faith and Christianity or how to do business in a certain way that's not commercial real estate related, I would encourage you to maybe stick around, because I think you'll see that doing business in a way that honors God is good business. Whether you believe in the God I'm talking about or not, these principles are just good business.
Yeah.
And
what did you think when I first mentioned that? Like, I want to hear more about the faith in business, like initially, and then that text too. I'm just curious were you a bit surprised with that coming from me? Which I would assume there would be a little bit.
No, I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm. And I asked that, sorry, interrupting before you answer, but like, I feel a lot of times, and especially when I talk with mom and dad, that there's, they talk about faith all the time. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I can tell they hold their tongue around me often. And they've done that per my request, whether it was an email or a text message. I don't remember specifically, but like, I'd be sent Christian articles and things like that. At some point, I was like, please stop sending this to me, right? Please, and that was a different time in my life, where I was a little bit more arrogant, a little bit more feeling kind of what you were addressing of people who might be turned off by faith. I think I was that person, and I'm not anymore. Like, I'm more, I see beyond the bad name that people, the imperfect people give it.
Oh, yeah.
And though I don't subscribe to Christianity, I have come to a point where I see the positive change that it has made in so many people's lives and in the world. And I'm not quite convinced that's the only way to go at this point in my life, but I'm not, I don't have a cold shoulder to it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I want, especially our family, to know that I appreciate everything about them, including their belief, and don't necessarily want. And I'm speaking to mom and dad here, but that's my tummy.
Yeah. Well,
well, the thunder on a sunny day. Maybe I do believe. I don't know if the mic picked that up, and my stomach just.
That was loud.
Yeah, my tummy just growled. I want to hear more about it, and so, yeah, a little backstory. But that's.
Well, my guess is, and he hadn't said this, but I bet he would agree that even the questions that you asked of him during his episode really blessed him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the past to now, I don't see any hostility from you towards the gospel or Christianity or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's cool to see.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think the kind of foundational, as I thought about, man, where can we start talking about this? And I know you'll have questions, and you can, interrupt me, and we can take this wherever we need to go.
Sure.
I think if we're going to put a stake in the ground, what is different about trying to do business in a way that honors my faith or honors God versus how the world might do it? And I think the foundational presupposition, that's kind of redundant because presupposition is a foundational belief, but
yeah,
I think the presupposition that's different is to somebody who follows Jesus, we understand that everything that we have is not ours and it's God. Dad mentioned that during his episode.
Yes.
This idea that I don't own this stuff. Like we're sitting in a former bank branch that's now our office in the former vault, that we turned into our...
Which answers the question. Somebody commented, "Where's your studio?" And that's where it is. Owensboro, Kentucky, in a bank vault.
Yes.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And the world would say that I own this building.
Mm-hmm.
I would say God owns this building and everything else, and he's entrusted this resource, this asset to me to manage for him for the good of people and the glory of God.
Yeah.
I would say that's the foundational difference in doing business in a way that honors God, is that I recognize that this stuff that I have control over, quote unquote, is not mine, but I'm a manager. I'm a steward. You hear this word stewardship in churchy circles and stuff. And I don't love like churchy language.
Yeah.
I'm a manager for God. He's given me earthly control over a certain amount of assets, and it's my job to manage that stuff for the good of people and the glory of God.
Would that make Penny assistant to the regional manager?
It might make Alice assistant to the regional manager,
or assistant to the assistant to God's manager. There's a better term. Okay, move on.
And for all you out there, Penny is our property manager.
Yeah.
And so I thought I would go over maybe two concepts and then kind of drill it down to more tangible. Hey, if somebody's going to do business in a way that honors God, this is what it should look like. Mm-hmm. But the two big ideas, one of these is a concept I got from strategic coach and Dan Sullivan. It's the idea of these 4 freedoms. So I'm going to frame it the way he frames it, and then I'm going to mention how if you start from the presupposition that you don't own this stuff and you're a manager of God's resources, you might view these 4 a little bit differently, but these are the 4 freedoms.
Okay.
All right. First is freedom of time. Just think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you own your business. You're the boss. All right. If you have, the more success you have, the more freedom you have of your time. Now I get to experience this time freedom. And I'll give you some examples of how this has played out in my life. When I was with the Massimo Group, I was the COO and I was an employee. My time was as a W-2 employee of the Massimo Group. And if I wanted to take off for a day and just drive down and watch my daughter play summer basketball, like I did 3 days last week and 1 day this week already. If I wanted to do that, like I would have to go get permission from him to not work for the good of the Massimo Group.
Sure.
And actually spend my time for other purposes. Well, now that I'm the boss, like I can just do that. I have the freedom to spend my time the way I like. If I want to take the day off, I can take the day off. If I want to work 16 hours one day because we've got a hard deadline and we got to get something done, I got freedom to do that. If I want to take the family on vacation, like I have the time freedom. I don't need permission from somebody to spend my time in a certain way. That's a really nice thing. And I think a big draw for a lot of people to want to be their own boss or want to be an entrepreneur or want to own their own business is they get that time freedom.
Right. The irony in that too, because when they get it, they realize how much more time they're spending on trying to make a business work too, right?
Often the case is they'll start a business then they realize they got to work harder than they ever imagined they were going to have to. And,
right.
Yep.
For a time, right?
Yeah, or if they're not good at it for
longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
The second thing is the freedom of money or financial freedom. This is the idea that if there's an opportunity or something you want to do, if you have enough money, you have the freedom to do it. Like there's not a limitation on doing something because you don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
So you have this. So if you have a successful business and you make a certain amount of money, you gain this kind of freedom of time and freedom of money.
Yeah.
Which is also a very appealing thing about being an entrepreneur, running your own business. And a lot of people that get in commercial real estate, I've heard this over and over again.
Yeah.
People say, well, I was going down this path, but then I was working with this developer or this commercial real estate broker, and I saw the clothes that they wore, and I saw the car that they drove, and I saw how much fun they seemed to be having, and I just thought, man, I want those things. Yeah. What they're saying is, I want financial freedom. I want the riches that come, and so I'm going to be drawn to this particular job. I think a lot of people get into commercial real estate because of the cars they see brokers drive or whatever, you know.
Right.
It's that freedom of money that attracts them to the business. Right?
Makes me think of, did you see Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonah Hill stops Leonardo DiCaprio in that cafe.
He is such a complete degenerate in that movie.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
who Jonah Hill?
Well, everybody in that movie pretty much, but yeah, especially Jonah Hill.
Hey, that's so good in that role. Okay.
And those two freedoms might be kind of obvious. Like if I asked you to say what 4 freedoms, you might come up with those 2 pretty quick.
Right.
This next one might be a little less obvious, but it's freedom of relationship.
Oh.
If our company here is successful enough, we will get to the point where we have the freedom to say no to working with certain people that we don't want to work with.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I can get to the point where I can profile the people I want to work with.
Right.
I can try to attract certain people that are our ideal clients and customers. Mm-hmm. And by definition, that would mean that there are some who aren't our ideal customers and clients, and we can choose not to work with those people.
Right.
So you have this freedom of relationship. We have actually fired clients before, you know, and when we were having top producer Todd Humphreys, which was our previous episode or a couple episodes ago, you know, he was talking about some of our clients can make some mistakes in working with us, and they'll like meddle. They won't let us do our job. They won't share with us what they're actually trying to accomplish so we can serve their true needs.
Right.
Some clients are super high maintenance or unrealistic expectations, or there's a list of things that might disqualify you from being a good fit for our company. And if we have a certain amount of success, we have the freedom to say no to working with those people.
Yeah. That's the same thing in the acting industry.
I'm sure probably in any industry.
Yeah, probably. You know? Yeah. And all around, yeah.
And that improves your quality of life. Like if you only work with people that are a great fit, people you like, people you gain a tremendous amount of satisfaction in helping them accomplish their goals, and those goals are aligned with your goals and the values of your company. Like if all of that is in alignment and stuff, like that's an incredibly satisfying thing.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm helping people, and I'm not saying anything like, well, that means we only work with followers of Jesus. That's not the case.
Right.
All right.
Right.
And then the last one is freedom of purpose.
Huh.
And if you have time freedom and you have financial freedom and you have relationship freedom, then what you find is that you're in a place where you have the time, money, and network to serve the purposes that are meaningful to you. And that could be anything. Mm-hmm. So if you take those 4 freedoms and start from a place that God owns it all and I'm just a manager, then it would flow like this, I think. That first freedom, well, if I have the freedom of time, then I can choose to invest my most valuable resource, which is my time, into things that I care about the most. So in the last couple of weeks, you might just think, well, Bo has worked less and watched a lot of basketball games. Well, that's true. I've been in the office a lot less than a normal week, and I've watched a lot of basketball games that don't actually mean anything. This is summer basketball.
Yeah.
But what I've done is I've invested in my relationship with my daughter.
Right.
I've shown up for her.
Yeah.
And what I really want is I want her to know that Dad shows up for me.
Yeah.
He's my biggest fan. The next time something goes wrong, he's a safe place for me. You know, that's how I'm. Plus, I just love watching her play, and I've spent all kinds of time with her in the gym. I'm watching her put the work in, and I'm I've got the time freedom to invest in that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Now, there's nothing eternally beneficial about basketball necessarily.
Yeah.
But what I want her to learn...
A lot of people would disagree with you.
Yeah, that's true, especially in Kentucky.
Yeah.
But what I want her to learn...
behind you.
Yeah, look, I'm a fan, no question.
Oh, man, that little clip right there is going to go viral with angry UK fans. Nothing internally beneficial about basketball.
But look, what she's doing is she is sacrificing her time. She's putting the work in, not only for what she gets out of it, but for what the team gets out of it. Mm-hmm. She's going to make a great employee later on in life.
Yeah.
Or a great entrepreneur. She knows how to play a role on a team. Mm. She knows how to defer to people with greater strengths. Mm. She knows how to, there's so many great life lessons and all of that.
Unstoppable she will be.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
It's true.
And I've got the time freedom to invest in that. When it comes to financial freedom, I'm not the wealthiest guy in the world, not even close. But I've got a certain amount of financial freedom at this point so that when the Spirit leads me, I can say yes. Like if I'm moved to do something for someone or to support a cause financially, I have the means to say yes to that. And that hasn't always been true. Mm. For a follower of Jesus, if they accomplish this point where they have a certain amount of financial freedom, that gives them the ability to say yes when they're led to do something.
Yeah. So when you say the Spirit moves you, you're talking about moving you in the context of doing something of purpose rather than like the Spirit's moving me to...
Like leading me to do something is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Whatever that might be. And then with relationship, like freedom of relationship, and look, I'm not a proponent of, if somebody's a Christian and they're a business owner, then every client and every customer ever needs to hear the gospel and they just need to be evangelizing all the time. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. I'm not suggesting that. What I am suggesting is you're ready at any point to honor God in any relationship that you're in. Mm-hmm. And that may play out by just being honest and putting them first. Mm. So sometimes in commercial real estate, and I would say in any business, your clients' best interests are not your best interests. And so you find yourself in a little bit of a conundrum. Mm. If I do A, I serve the client's interest. If I do B, I serve my interests. Mm. So which one do I need to do?
You got an example of that?
Yeah, and let's save that.
Okay.
We'll get into that a little bit more.
All right.
Because there's a couple stories I can think of.
Okay.
And then when it comes to freedom of purpose, that's a little bit more obvious, But like I've got a buddy of mine who discipled me in college, and now he works for a company, or it's not a company, it's an organization. Here's what they do. Their mission is for a church to be within walking distance of everybody on the planet. Mm. Really big goal, all right? And so what they do is they come alongside congregations that don't have a location all over the world in countries that are very hostile to the gospel or whatever. And they help them build churches. So they raise funds in America and they come alongside existing congregations and build them a building that ends up being their church. It ends up being a community center. Mm. It ends up being a place, a safe place for the community. In a lot of cases, it ends up being like a safe house for women being rescued out of sex slavery and human trafficking situations and stuff like that. It's really cool what they do.
Yeah.
Well, because our company has been a certain amount of successful, when he was sharing that with me, I was like, man, I'd love to be able to do something like that. And so our company has been able to fund a church being built in India. Mm. That's the kind of freedom of purpose. Like we have the freedom here to spend time and resources on the things that we think really matter and make a difference in the world.
Right.
So
yeah.
Those are kind of the four freedoms as strategic coach would lay them out, and then how I would think somebody who's a follower of Jesus would view them. Mm-hmm. Okay. The other concept I wanted to mention is, and this is something that I heard from Brian Kroll for the first time. I don't know if he framed this up or if it came from somewhere else. I'm not sure, but I heard this from him, and it's the idea of a triple bottom line business. Huh. How many times have you heard Dad mention the bottom line? Like, he is a bottom line thinker.
Oh, yeah.
He'll take in a tremendous amount of information, especially in the context of business, but in other contexts as well. Taking all this information, and he just, his brain fires through scenarios, and he drops it all down to the bottom line. And he can tell really fast how it will affect the bottom line. And he often makes business decisions based on the effect of the bottom line.
Right.
Will this be profitable or not?
Right.
A triple bottom line business or a triple bottom line entrepreneur is thinking about three separate, related, and aligned bottom lines. There's the idea of the economic bottom line or economic capital. Then there's social capital or the social bottom line. And then there's spiritual capital and the spiritual bottom line. So here's how this plays out. If I have economic capital, like I have the ability to invest that capital for the good of the company and the people in it, financially speaking. So like I can choose to invest that capital in things that I think are good for people and will bring glory to God. I think as a family, generationally, we've got a generational history of being incredibly generous on this idea, the economic bottom line. Like I've seen mom and dad, seen granddad and grandmom have been, on both sides of the family, been incredibly generous to us with their finances. We've seen mom and dad invest their dollars into causes that they care about.
Right.
In a big way. Like mom and dad are some of the most philanthropic, generous people I've ever known.
I know.
Yeah, it's amazing. But when you get to social capital, this is something that didn't land for me automatically. And I don't know that our family is generationally just naturally good at this one. Social capital is the network that we have, the goodwill that we have with people, and intentionally, on purpose, using that social capital to provide opportunity for others. I don't generally think this way. And Brian's been challenging me to be much more intentional with the social capital that I have. And if you think about the network that I have, that I would probably more accurately say that the Lord has blessed me with.
Sure.
I've got buddies from high school and college that I've had relationships with for years and years and years. I've got Marine Corps friends that are great friends. I don't connect with them very often, but like when we do, the relational bond there is deep. The CCIM network that I've got, like I know some of the best brokers in any market in the United States, and some in Canada. Like it's amazing the relationships that I have there, augmented by my time at the Massimo Group. I've coached some of the best brokers in some of the biggest markets in the United States. And other people that I know through that network, just growing up in this town and going to a large church, and those relationships, all those relationships, that gives me the opportunity to use that social capital for the good of others, to provide opportunities to the good of others. And I don't think about that very often. And then spiritual capital, pretty obviously, like really just investing in others for the good of the kingdom or for their eternal benefit. Whatever. So, just being involved at church, or, teach a Sunday school class and meet with these guys on Wednesday mornings. We met this morning, and I'm taking them through the Old Testament in chronological order.
Oh, wow.
The Old Testament is not written in order, not even close. And if you don't understand the timeline, it's almost impossible to understand the context of what's being written or what's being communicated. And if you don't understand the context, it's almost impossible to interpret anything correctly.
Yeah.
So if you read the Old Testament from cover to cover, you're jumping around a timeline. It's almost impossible to understand. And so if you can unlock that for someone, and look, you remember Bob Warren. Yeah. Like he taught me the timeline when I was probably 18.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for the last almost 30 years, as I've been reading in the Old Testament, I've been able to put things in the right place, and it's helped me understand context and what they're actually communicating. So somebody has spiritually invested in me. In this case, it was Bob Warren. He unlocked the Old Testament for me by teaching me the timeline. And so now I'm trying to invest into these guys I meet with on Wednesday morning. So that's just an example of investing spiritual capital. So triple bottom line, 4 freedoms, and this presupposition that God owns it all. But how does that actually play out day to day? And so
the 4 freedoms, was that in the context of Christianity?
No.
Just business, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. You've got these 4 freedoms, and that's relating to business, not particularly faith, but yeah, okay. Yeah,
but if you have this Christian worldview, you're a follower of Jesus, you would probably, like I did, take those 4 freedoms and think, well, this really aligns. If I believe God owns it all, here's how I'll live out these 4 freedoms.
Yeah.
And it might look a little differently than if you don't start from the place that God owns it all.
Right. And then the other thing I wanted to say, but I didn't want to interrupt. I did so good biting my tongue. Was when I saw, this is, I think, early 20s or mid 20s. I was in Chicago. There's like this big movement of, there's a lot of talk about the top 1%.
Like the economic chasm between the rich getting richer and the
Bernie
gap
Sanders
between...
was really about to have his heyday and run. And I was all, I was just jumping on the bandwagon like, yeah, no. And, and thinking about mom and dad, but like dad specifically, I was like, what would be his problem with paying taxes if that's going to help people who are having a hard time, right? Just that thought. And it all clicked with me when I forget what prompted this, but he showed me the amount of money that he gives every year. I was flabbergasted at the amount, it percentage wise, right? Not just the dollar amount, but percentage wise. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, he doesn't want the government to decide where that money is going. He wants to decide where that money is going as a steward of that money, right? And I was like, oh. And what's nice is that, with being charitable, you can write that off on your taxes. So in a sense, you are taking control of that money that you would otherwise be paying to the government, who would put it where they want to go, whether you agree with it or what they do with it or not, right?
That's exactly right. And just to be clear, Dad pays every dollar of taxes that he has to pay.
Yes.
But he's as strategic as possible in being able to keep as much of that because he wants to give to the things he believes he's being called to give to.
Right.
As opposed to, as you said, giving it to the government.
I wouldn't even say keep the most of it. It'd be like giving it to where being the one who chooses where it goes.
Exactly.
And then the only thing about that is like, the only thing about that is it seems like mom and dad are an anomaly. And I don't know how many people at that level are actually doing that. Does that make sense?
They're not an anomaly.
Yeah.
In fact, the majority of philanthropy comes from entrepreneurs and business owners in that top 1%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's the majority of that kind of giving and generosity comes from the mom and dads of the world.
Yeah.
Like they're totally not an anomaly. All right. So you want some, how's this actually play out stuff?
Yeah. What are you going to teach me about this?
Like integrity and ethics. This is a biblical worldview on how to do business. Mm-hmm. But if you don't subscribe to the biblical worldview, this is just good business.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
So dealing with people with integrity and ethics, or in other words, do what you say you're going to do. You tell the truth. You're honest with people. You deal with people for what they get out of it, understanding that the more you help people, the more you'll gain. And I've got verses for all of this stuff.
Let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
So here we've got, and this is stuff you will have heard before, but when I said, doing what you say you're going to do, like what verse pops to mind?
May your yes be yes and your no be no and never swear.
That's exactly right. That is James 5:12.
I like this too. I bet I'll be able to say most of these.
I think you will. James 5:12 says, but above all, My brothers, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth, or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, so that you may not fall under judgment. So if you do business this way, people will know they can trust you. Mm-hmm. People will be quick to hire you. I mean, this is just good business.
Yeah.
Tell the truth. Do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Show up when you say you're going to show up.
Right.
Like,
what's your interpretation of the swear part? Like, what does that mean to you through all your study and all your context? Because I always thought that just means don't say curse words.
No,
right?
I don't think so. I think in this context, it's saying, I swear to God, I'll do this thing. Yeah. No, just I'll do this thing. Let your yes be yes, your no. Like, you don't need to swear by heaven or by earth to make somebody believe you.
Oh, gotcha.
Just have a life that is characterized by doing what you say you're going to do, and people will trust you.
Yeah.
Don't swear by these things. You can't control them.
Yeah, it's like there's no need to promise somebody anything.
If you have integrity.
If you have integrity and you do what you say you're going to do,
yep.
There's never a need to be like, I promise, I'll get it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yep.
Luke 6:31 says, and just as you want people to treat you, treat them in the same way.
The golden rule.
The golden rule.
Yeah.
This is just good business, but it's straight out of Luke 6. And then you've got Proverbs 10:9, basically communicates something similar that says, he walks in integrity, walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will be found out. Yeah. If you're a snake in the grass, like if you're acting like you're acting in somebody else's best interest, but it's really your own, but if you say you're going to do something and you do something else, you don't follow through, like, you're going to be found out.
Oh my goodness.
That's bad business.
Yeah, man. And that rings so true in the time that we live right now too. Like Cat Williams, are you privy to the Cat Williams stuff? Well, he was just saying how 2024 is the year people are going to get found out, right?
All of these big deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
Who's Cat Williams?
Cat Williams, a comedian.
Okay.
He's a short comedian.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. So that's integrity and ethics. The second idea is excellence.
Do everything as if for the Lord and not for men. There's one.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm going to give you two verses essentially that say that. One is Colossians 3:23. Yeah. And the backstory of Colossians 3:23 is, I would imagine every child in our family knows that verse well.
Yes.
Me, probably more than most, because Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, do it heartily as for the Lord rather than men, for it's the Lord whom you serve. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So growing up, I was probably the laziest of any of us. And I frustrated Dad all the time. And he would always quote this verse, whatever you do, do it as for the Lord rather than men, for it's the Lord whom you serve. And he used to make me write it when I was lazy or when I didn't do work in an excellent way. Yeah. So at one point I felt like I got like a little, like a tick every time I heard Colossians 3:23.
Yeah.
But from a biblical worldview, if you understand that God owns it all, and regardless of whether I'm the boss or not, but it's the way I work that reflects on my character and becomes a part of my testimony. So I want there to be an amount of excellence. Now, this is different from perfection. Like, there's nothing that we ever do at this company that couldn't be improved upon.
Sure.
So we don't shoot for perfection here. We shoot for excellence. And there's a big, big difference. But we talked about Colossians 3:23. There's also 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. It's that same idea. Mm-hmm. And then Ephesians 6:7 says, with good will render service as to the Lord and not to men. I want everything we do here at the company to be done in an excellent way. Because the truth is, we are working for the Lord or for the good of people and the glory of God. So this next thing is generosity and philanthropy. we've talked about this a little bit already. The more successful that we are, the more that we realize that it's all the Lord's anyway, the easier it is to be generous and philanthropic.
Yeah.
All right. And so if you go to 1 Timothy 6, verse 18, it says this: instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, and to be generous and ready to share. If you don't do things in an excellent way, if people don't believe you or trust you to have integrity, if you hadn't had enough success to be financially free in some ways, you're not able to do this work. You're not. But whatever you have, be willing to do good and willing to share with others in need. And then there's this verse in Philippians 2:3, and this is, man, if there's a huge distinction between business people who follow Jesus and those who don't, I think it's this verse. It says, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, let each of you regard one another as more important than yourself.
Yeah.
This is the anti-big ego verse.
Yeah.
And in business, especially the more successful you get, the bigger your ego tends to get, the more selfish you can tend to get.
Sure.
It's really easy to go to that place.
Yeah.
And so, man, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, let each of you regard one another as more important than yourself. That's just good business. All right. And this goes back to what we were talking about in a previous episode. You walk into a place with curiosity.
Right.
Which was your point. It's a great point. Like, walk in interested in the people that are there.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're there for them, to learn about them, to benefit them, and it's not about you. And it just, and the whole flavor of the event or the conversations that you have will be very, very different.
Yeah.
And you can actually regard others as more important than yourself. One of the first things that happened when I got out of the Marine Corps and I started working with Dad was he had just put a Walmart deal together. And so he was working with the Walmart real estate folks to do the Walmart out on Highway 54.
Oh.
Walmart number 2.
Oh, yeah.
And to do that, he had to, and they used Dad to do this, they had to put together like 7 or 8 pieces of property. They had to get all of these people to agree to sell. It was a lot of work, and Dad was uniquely suited to pull that off.
Yeah.
But essentially, a contract for one of those parcels was written in such a way that it was too ambiguous on the amount of land that it was actually being bought for a certain price. And if you looked at it, the sellers agreed to sell for a certain amount per acre. When the purchase agreement finally got written and executed, it was for this parcel for this amount of money. But there was a difference there of, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 grand. It was a significant amount of money, especially these people. And essentially, if you looked at it on the per acre price, the parcel they sold was a little bit bigger than the initial negotiations. And so they should have been paid more. But it didn't really work itself out. It's almost like they agreed on a price for a certain amount of land. And when the deal actually got put on paper, it was that price for a little bit larger amount of land. So they got diluted a little bit. And after everything closed, this sort of came to light. And the people were like, hey, wait a second. So Dad goes to Walmart. He appeals to them to make this right. They basically tell him to, I was about to say, go pound sand. I don't know that they responded. To them, the deal was done. And I don't know that they tried to take advantage of anything. It just played out that way.
Right.
I don't want to throw any shade on Walmart or whatever, but
yeah,
they weren't interested in rehashing this. It was closed. You know, the reality is everybody had an opportunity to notice this before the closing and to deal with it then.
Yeah.
We all missed it. 100% of the dollars that Dad made on that deal, he gave back to these people.
Wow.
So that was like my first week on the job.
Right.
I knew our dad was an honorable guy.
Yeah.
I knew he let his yes be yes. I knew he had integrity. But the first thing I saw was him putting others in front of himself. Any business person that thinks they're more important than their clients and are trying to serve their own interest into somebody else, they would never have done that.
Yeah.
But if you consider others as more important than yourself, then you may do what Dad did there.
Right.
And so, and right off the bat, I was like, man, this is what business looks like. You do the right thing.
Right.
You know, you try to make things right when something goes wrong. You know, and Dad was way more interested in his name than dollars.
Right.
And man, I'm the beneficiary of that, and so are you.
Yeah.
Like our last name has a connotation in this town because of the behavior and the character of our dad and our granddad.
That's
like
right.
We're the beneficiaries of that. And I want that to continue to the next generation.
Yeah.
You know, this is just good business.
Yeah. And he always said that your name is worth more than gold and silver.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is quoting scripture.
Yeah. But you saw firsthand how much he
put his money where his mouth
that.
was,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know a whole lot of people that would have done that.
Right.
You know, and that, I mean, that left an impression.
Seems like a big deal, Walmart, you know?
The next thing is to live out our faith visibly. And this has way more to do with our character and our kindness than it does, and I mentioned this earlier, just evangelizing all the time.
This would be a type of evangelism, I think. And you're specifically talking about the straight up, I'm talking to you about Jesus.
Yeah.
Evangelism, right?
You know, when we meet with a new client, I'm trying to find out about them. I'm trying to find out, what are they really trying to accomplish? Right? Yeah, you want to sell this building, I get that. But like, what are you actually trying to accomplish? What do you want your life to look like 3 years down the road? We ask them all these questions. We try to get to know them. And in some ways, it's a test. If they won't share with us some of these things, they might not be a good fit for us. We may decide not to work with them. So we've got freedom of relationship around here. But if they'll let us in and actually let us understand what they're trying to accomplish long term, then that helps me serve them better on this specific deal that they're wanting to accomplish. In that needs assessment, like, I'm not going to 100% of the time say, you know, oh, by the way, you ever think about spiritual things? You know, and like lead that into a gospel presentation. Like I'm not, that's not what I'm talking about here.
Right.
Now, maybe that happens.
Right.
All right. But that's not I'm not trying to work the gospel into everything I do so that I can have these gospel presentation conversations.
Right.
What I do want is that 100% of my behavior to reflect the gospel.
Yeah.
And so I want to serve them. I want to consider them more important than myself. I want to deal with them with humility. I want to deal with them in an excellent way. I want my yes to mean yes. I want to have integrity. I want all those things to be true so that they might wonder, and what is it about this company, you know, or what is it about this guy or whatever?
Yeah.
So here's a couple of verses. One is Romans 2:4. I think it's Romans 2:4. Basically says it's the loving kindness of the Lord that leads to repentance. This is, I wish the church would just meditate on what this verse actually means. It's loving on people that leads to repentance and change, right? It's not arguing with them. It's not debating theology. It's not
judging, condemning.
Yeah. All that's, it's none of that stuff leads to repentance. It's the loving kindness of the Lord that leads to repentance. The people who say they follow Jesus are just out there telling the world all the things they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And they're not showing the love, right?
Right.
And it's so counterproductive.
Right.
That's a little bit oversimplified, but you get my point.
Yes, I do.
Matthew 5:16 goes along with this. This is from the Sermon on the Mount. Let your light shine before men
That
in
they
such
may
a way.
see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Matthew 5:16.
What's that?
Donut Man or something.
Oh, yeah. But that's what that is, right?
Yeah.
Let your light shine. Like, do business, relate with people in such a way, interact with people in such a way that they see your good works and not glorify you, but glorify God who's in heaven.
Right.
Like, I want to do business in such a way that people will look at what we do around here and actually glorify God. And here's the another verse that I think is taken out of context. Misunderstood. It's probably a better way to say
Description.
it. 1 Peter 3:15, and this is a famous verse. You probably heard it. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence.
Oh, yeah.
Or live in such a way that is honoring to the Lord. All right, so do business according to some of these things we're talking about. Consider others more important than yourselves. Serve in an excellent way. Let your yes be yes, so that you can be ready to make a defense to everyone who you come in contact with. Is that what it says? To everyone you do business with? No, that's not what it says. You can always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks.
Ah.
That's a huge distinction. I want to live in such a way that people want to ask me what's different.
Right.
And when they ask me, I'm ready to give them an answer for why.
Right. I mean, dude, just talking with Dad triggered that in me.
Especially in my business here. I'm not trying to initiate gospel conversations with people all the time. I'm trying to do business in such a way that people will ask me why we're different.
Yeah.
And then I've got an invitation to share Jesus with them.
Yeah. Right.
See, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and respect, which Christians aren't always great at.
I know the church should meditate on that one too.
All right. Next thing, two more. Accountability and alignment with biblical principles. This idea of accountability is almost like discipleship in the workforce. I think this one is harder than some of the others. Like integrity and ethics. Not only is that kind of easy to wrap my brain around, but I saw Dad do it. That looks normal to me.
Right.
You know, even if I weren't a follower of Jesus, just seeing how Dad did business, like that makes a ton of sense. I can see why it's a good idea, why it's good business. Excellence, doing things in an excellent way, that just makes sense. Being generous and philanthropic, if I weren't a follower of Jesus, I'd probably have a little bit of a problem with that. I'd probably be more selfish. I'd want to keep that for myself a little bit more. But when it comes to accountability, this is like holding each other accountable to doing excellent work. This gets harder because as Christians, man, we just want to love everybody. You know what churches are terrible at? Firing people. You know what they do instead? This guy's not doing good work here. We're gonna let's try him in this job over here.
Right.
Don't have the stomach to hold him accountable to doing good work and to releasing him to find a great fit somewhere because it's not here.
Right.
I don't have the backbone to do that. Let's just move him over here. That didn't work again. Let's move him over here.
Just don't want my employees thinking that their jobs depend on performance.
So you will see churches with people in positions that should have been let go decades ago, but have worked in every position in the church because nobody's got the heart to actually release them to go find the thing God's called them to do. And I don't refer to our business here as a family. We're not a family. We're a team of people who are doing business together, and teams hold each other accountable. Sometimes you got to let somebody go. That's incredibly hard. And if I were a heartless, it would just be easier, you know? And sometimes you got to make a call because we are a business. And if the business doesn't prosper, nobody has a job. We need to hold each other accountable. And so 2 Timothy 2:2, you've probably heard this as well. And the things that you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, these entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. That verse is in the context of discipling people. What Paul's saying to Timothy, who he's writing to there, is, hey, these things that I've taught you, teach to others. But he just doesn't say any others. He says, these entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. So he's telling Timothy, hey, entrust these things, disciple faithful men who will turn around and do it as well. And we mentioned in a previous episode, I had that dad who asked me to spend some time with his son and his son-in-law. Yeah. And the first thing I did was I tested these guys to see if they were in. I was trying to figure out, are these faithful men who will be able to turn around and teach others also? Yeah. And that relationship I still have a relationship with these guys.
Yeah.
But us meeting together, that
Mentoring
fizzled
based.
out
Yeah.
pretty quickly because of this. Now, in business, it's the same way. Like, I want to, whether it's top producer Todd Humphreys, who doesn't need me to mentor him much at all. I mean, we've got some strengths that really fill in some weaknesses for each other. So he mentioned it. We're a good team.
Yeah.
But like, I don't have to teach him how to do the business.
Right.
He knows what he's doing. But as we bring on new to the business folks, I'm going to spend a lot of time discipling them in the business. And I'm trying to figure out really, really fast if they're quote unquote faithful people who want to grow, will do, and have the ability to turn around and do the same thing for others. That's investing social capital into others who can then turn around and carry that on.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I would say, and I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm leaving out, but delegation according to strengths. This is the idea of being good stewards, not only of the resources that God has entrusted us with, but also with the human talent that he's brought to the company. I want to view the human talent as also belonging to God and deploying that well. So as the leader of our company here, I want to delegate and put people in the position of their strengths so that they can have the most success imaginable, so our company can have the most success possible in serving the people who we work with.
Yeah.
That's Romans 14:12. So then each one of us shall give an account of himself to God. I think this verse is way misunderstood. And so I don't want to go full bore like Sunday school lesson. But what that means to me is I don't think I have to give an account for every sin that I've ever given. Like, I have zero anxiety or fear about standing in front of God in some point in the future and having to account for every sin that I ever committed. Because you know what? They're forgiven. And God says in a number of different places that he actually forgets them. So I don't think he's got a book of all my sins. What I do think I'm going to have to give an account for is how I've managed the resources he's given me. And I do think I'm going to have to give an account for the works that I've done, not the sins that I've committed, and there's a difference. God says, look, I brought this talent to the company. Like, how did you use it? And I want to use it well. I want to delegate responsibilities and authority in ways that put people in positions of their strengths and so that they're able to have success for everybody's benefit.
Of course, there's the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mentioned when we were talking to Todd Humphreys how I did one day cross country. Do you know that story?
I've heard you tell that story before.
Yeah, because I didn't want to do band, right? And I had done band for 4 years previous, and I was playing the French horn. So, mom, dad bought me a French horn, and those aren't super cheap.
Nope.
And so, it's time to go to high school. Band is not cool, right? In my mind. So many lessons I learned around this time about being cool or following the crowd or caring what other people think that I'm so grateful for, because it's really changed. It changed my trajectory in life in such a positive way that I think a lot of people that I know either aren't there yet or got there later in life as far as caring what people think.
Yeah.
But, when I told Dad I didn't want to do band, what he said was like, okay, well, we're going to take this French horn and you go bury it in the backyard, right? Because he and Mom recognized where my talents were. And then I had to choose to do something else. Like, I had to do something. And, of course, I did cross country. And then for one day, and then I was like, I'll do band. And then we ended up winning state championship.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. The Band of Pride.
Davis County High School Band of Pride. And I just remember that being one of the best feelings of my life. That wouldn't have happened if, Mom and Dad were just like, okay, whatever you want to do, we support whatever you want to do, and didn't hold to or recognize my, where my giftedness was. And
and look, what's the verse? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it.
Yeah.
That's not talking about train up a child to love Jesus.
Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We should do that as parents,
Right.
But that's saying help your child find out what the Lord has gifted him to do.
Ah.
Total different meaning when you think of it in those terms.
Yeah, I think mom and dad interpret that the other way about Jesus, or they used to.
I think most of the church does.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about a lot of stuff. I just don't think so, or I wouldn't think that way.
Right,
you know?
right. I mean, you are a student of the Bible for sure, in a refreshing way. Like really trying to understand the context and what it means, and not just take it by what somebody else said it means or whatever.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think my giftedness is in teaching, and I so enjoy teaching anything. So, like, I love teaching my Sunday school class. I love teaching CCIM courses.
Yeah.
Those two things couldn't be any different. I mean, they're not opposed to each other, but
Right.
just totally, I just love to teach.
Yeah.
I love teaching you this stuff.
Yeah.
I just love to do this.
Yeah.
But any questions?
I do. Well, there's something I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this will make it in the podcast. Like, specifically, Dad used to not rent residential to unmarried couples for, for biblical reasons.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
Well, Dad and I had many, many conversations about this
Yeah.
because I don't see eye to eye with him on this.
Yeah.
Now, his point of view, and I get where he's coming from, he views all of his assets as belonging to the Lord, and he's a steward of that. Mm-hmm. So it would logically follow for him to say, if I'm going to honor the Lord in managing these apartments or these duplexes, then I'm going to choose not to rent them to people who are living outside of God's design of marriage.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. Yeah.
He even would take that opportunity when he would decide not to lease to someone to share with them why.
Yeah.
And he'd even share the gospel with them sometimes,
right.
To help them understand why he's making that decision. And we came to different conclusions on that topic, Dad and I. I wanted the opportunity to, serve people, put a roof over their head, and have the opportunity to influence them. He wanted to make sure that he managed God's resources the way he felt he was called to do. Mm-hmm. I can't really argue with that. So, there's a big difference in me saying, Dad, I think you're wrong. What I would say is, and I want to use the resources God's entrusted me to proactively try to have an influence on people.
Right.
He saw things differently.
He did. And I've talked to him a couple of times, and there are verses that say, don't pass judgment, right? You are not the judge. God is the judge, right? Not us. And in a sense, it seems like that would be a version of passing judgment on somebody's sin, a specific sin. Sin is sin. So why is there, and of course, Jesus loved sinners and spent time with them. I feel like Jesus would have rented to them because it seems like a form of passing judgment.
We're actually called to judge each other.
Yeah, I'd say more.
So 20 years ago, what was the most quoted verse? This is an obvious answer. Most quoted verse in the world.
John 3:16.
Totally. Yeah. You know what it is now? It's Matthew 7:1. Do not judge, lest ye be judged. That is now the most quoted verse. And context is the key here.
Yeah.
Who's he really talking to? Who's Jesus actually talking to in the Sermon on the Mount? Who's there in the audience?
A bunch of people.
In a lot of ways, he's talking to the Pharisees.
Oh, yeah.
Who were all about outward behavior.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing about heart level anything.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So when Jesus says, do not judge lest you be judged, for in the way you judge, you will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. He's really talking to the Pharisees, and he's sticking it to them. Mm-hmm. And so taken out of context, you read that and you're saying, see, I can do whatever I want. You can't judge me. Do not judge lest you be judged. Well, Paul, in his writing to the churches, is giving them instruction on how to judge. And what the church is called to do is to judge each other, to hold each other accountable to righteousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
but that's in the context of the church, right? Your fellow believers. Yeah.
So when I say we're actually called to judge each other, I am talking in the context of the church.
Yeah.
But to do it in a way with gentleness and respect and love and call the best out of people, you know. But it's actually the Holy Spirit's job to convict the world of sin, righteousness, and judgment.
I think one of the things or one of my arguments or pleas, really, plea to Dad was the kind of what you said a little bit was like, if I was in that position and I go, you know, and Dad says, I'm not renting to you for this reason, and here's why, that'd just be a huge turnoff to Christianity. I would feel discriminated against. And it kind of goes, I guess, do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, like, I agree with you. However, you never water down the truth so that people aren't offended or turned off.
Sure.
Truth is truth.
Sure. Yeah.
Oftentimes, truth is offensive.
Yeah.
And truth is really offensive to somebody who's living contrary to truth.
Right. Right.
So, like, I would never suggest that a follower of Jesus water down the truth a little bit. Let's make sure we don't offend people so that we can love on them. To, you know, that's a mistake.
Right.
In my opinion.
I agree with you. Yeah.
But to be able to communicate the truth with gentleness and respect and a lot of tact in a way that says, look, I understand this is going to be hard to hear.
Yeah.
Right. But here's what I believe the truth is. And, you know, here's how I think it's going to play out. And I'd plead with you to reconsider your position or behave differently or something like,
right.
You know, just try to do it with a lot of humility and respect.
Which I'm sure Dad did. I'm sure Dad was gentle with these people when he let them down or whatever. But
I really wasn't talking there in the context of Dad in that situation.
It just seemed contrary to what that I believe that it would hurt his witness more than anything. But yeah, he just sees it differently, I guess.
And the nature of a presupposition, a closely held foundational belief, is those are your anchor points, and they're almost impossible to move somebody else's anchor points. And so in this case, that has a closely foundational belief. It's led him to do business in a certain way. And there's not a logical reasoning that will allow you to convince him to move that anchor. Everybody's that way about their presuppositions.
Yeah.
There's this great story. This guy believed he was dead. You heard me tell this story before?
No.
He believed he was dead, and he's seeing a therapist, right?
Yeah.
And whatever the therapist does, she can't make this guy understand that he's not dead. He was there physically. He was talking to this woman, having a conversation, and totally believed he was dead. Okay?
Yeah.
So she thought, ask him a question. Do you believe dead people bleed? He's like, no, we don't bleed. Dead people don't bleed. So she took a little pin and she poked his finger and he started bleeding. Case closed.
Yeah.
Right? He goes, we do bleed.
Right.
It's kind of a joke, but the illustration is you generally order your world around your closely held beliefs, those foundational, those presuppositions.
Right.
And that's kind of an example of that. And so it doesn't, you can't talk somebody out of that. Like they have to, like if you put me and an atheist in the same room, I don't know that I can convince them with words or logic or my knowledge of the Bible or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to speak truth to them, you know, because I believe there's power in that, but I don't think there's anything that I can do. What I do think is possible is for that person to see me live my life in such a way where they're like, I got questions.
Yeah.
They start asking me questions and I'm prepared to give them an answer for the hope that I have. That can work. All right. But they're going to have to either, I firmly believe in that scenario, they have to see me go through hell with hope, or they are going to have so much success and find out that it's empty, right? They believed everything was leading to this place. I'm going to have this amount of success and I'm going to be fulfilled. I'm going to have satisfaction. And they find out that they don't.
Yeah.
Then they have questions and they might want to talk to me. Or if they see me go through a situation where they just think, man, if I were going through that, like it wouldn't look like this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I've got questions.
Yeah.
I want to live my life in such a way where people have questions. And I screw up at that all the time. That's how I think that works, is something in your life happens to shake those foundational beliefs. And I don't believe that I have words that can do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's fascinating to me. Because I know a lot of atheists that are happy and fulfilled in their life, but because they're not searching for that type of fulfillment, right?
Yeah, and I didn't mean to intimate that.
I was just, it just made me think that. I don't think you were.
Yep.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people that are trying to, if I just get to this point, I'll be happy, right? That is sad. Very sad, because everything leaves you unfulfilled if you think it's something that you're trying to get to. And for me, it's like learning to enjoy and be grateful for what you have and enjoy the journey. It's not a destination you're getting to, because it's each day, it's the pursuit of a destination or a pursuit of a goal or something. Being so grateful for the present and understanding this is all we actually have right now, right? We don't have what just happened. We don't have what's going to happen. We just have right now in this moment.
And I'm actually pretty bad at that, because I'm generally always in my mind, I'm in the future somewhere trying to figure something out. And
Right.
I struggle with the present.
Yeah.
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 That's,
I think most people do.
well, I certainly do.
Yeah.
So I would, back to the original premise here is you'd like to hear more about faith in business.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I would just, in a nutshell, say, if you start from a place that God owns it all and you understand 4 freedoms that can come from having freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, freedom of purpose. And you want to build a business that is a triple bottom line business where there's economic capital and there's social capital and there's spiritual capital, that you're on purpose and intentionally trying to invest for the good of people and the glory of God. Then the way it probably looks is there's going to be a lot of integrity. You're going to do work in an excellent way. You'll be generous and philanthropic. You'll live out your faith visibly through your character and your kindness, not necessarily through your words all the time.
Yeah.
There's going to be accountability. Like, you're going to hold people accountable to doing excellent work, which can be very hard, and that you're going to try to put people in positions of their strengths for their benefit and the company's benefit, and ultimately for the benefit of the people that you serve.
Yeah.
And I am probably leaving a lot of stuff out, but that's
what
I think, faith in business looks like.
Yeah. And that's something that I just so admired, or always have admired, but I had a more appreciation for it when we were talking to Dad, of just like all the things he's accomplished. To him, it's like nothing.
Well, he called it wood, hay, and stubble.
Or wood, hay, and stubble. A box of wood, hay, and stubble that has all the trophies. Well, I got one back here. Did I? You don't know what this trophy is? It's a 2002 Kentucky Country Day Invitational. This is a trophy I got for solo acting. 6th place.
6th place. Well done.
Oh my gosh. Like, when I saw that.
How many people were?
I have no clue. I went to so many of these, right? And I've got a ton of trophies.
More than 6?
I don't think there would have been more than 6.
I'm just wondering if that was last place.
Oh, it very well could have been. I think this is my first year on the speech team.
Well, let's wrap this up.
Okay, yeah.
I just got an email from one of our near future guests, and our sister Cody has agreed to come in person, join us for an episode where we will get into Myers-Briggs personalities,
the science of
how to deploy that information to really help people find what they're good at, and put them in positions where they can have success.
Yeah.
And
we've talked previously about the gift that she gave us one Christmas, having us all fill it out. And for a family of 8, that are all so different.
With spouses and all that. Yeah.
It was incredible. It was incredible how I learned that Jay wasn't just trying to tick me off all the time. He really thinks very literally. You know?
Yep.
Yeah. Not saying, he didn't try to tick me off. I
Yeah,
definitely tried to tick him off. I think that's in my personality type, trying to push buttons. Well, that's something to look forward to. Make sure you hit subscribe, ding that little bell so you never miss that, so you don't miss this incredible episode. I know it's going to be great.
Yeah. And if you've gotten any value from these episodes, we really appreciate you investing your time, which is so valuable. We don't take that for granted, and we're very grateful. But if you've gotten anything out of this, we'd invite you to especially head over to Apple and leave a review. That helps us out a ton.
Yeah.
That helps this podcast get exposed to more people that it can help.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to give back to us a little bit and help us out, that'd be a great way to do it.
The best way.
We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've got a free weekly newsletter that goes out every Thursday. You can sign up at subscribe.wgbaron.com. It will show you the next episode and several other articles about
negotiation, business, entrepreneurship, leadership. It's not just about commercial real estate.
Yeah.
But it's a way to connect with us and see what's coming and get the latest podcast episodes directly to your inbox.
That's
We'd
right.
invite you to join us there. It's free. It comes out Thursdays, I believe.
Thursdays.
Every week.
Yeah, it's great. If you admire my older brother Bo like I do, this is the kind of stuff that he really sinks his teeth into. Hop on, join us. And then finally, Bo is doing a series with CCIM called Currently Commercial, and you've got a very exciting guest coming up on the next one.
Yeah, depending on when you're listening to this, if you're listening to it basically when it's published, June 26th is our next webinar. You can go to ccim.com, go to the education tab and type in Currently Commercial, and you'll be able to register for that. And I've got Bryant Cheeley from, I said he was from Lafayette, Louisiana. He's not. He lives in Baton Rouge.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he's going to come on and show us some ways to streamline operations in commercial real estate using AI. And I had a call with him yesterday. We kind of walked through what he's going to be covering, and it's going to be good.
Yeah.
I can't wait to learn what he's got for us. So,
Yeah, we've talked about-
please join us. We'd love to have you join us there.
Yeah, that link will be in the comments too, or in the show notes, wherever you're listening or watching. And of course, we throw that in the newsletter as well. That might be the easiest way to get that. But we've done ChatGPT episodes before, but we are not experts. We know just a little bit of it, so I'm actually excited to hear what you're going to learn.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Would he come on this, or would that be a conflict of interest?
Yeah, I totally expect to have him on in the future.
Yeah, because I'm so
sure.
interested. I got questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, for the podcast, there's a couple guests I have in mind. I'm taking an AI course from a buddy of mine named Michael Hieronymus, who's a 102 instructor like I am.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine. I'm taking his course right now. It's unbelievable. And we'll probably have him on about the time he launches the next group going through his course.
Oh, nice.
So we can promote that a little bit. But
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff he's showing is next level awesome.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got some, the point is here, we got some great guests lined up.
Yep.
And you know what? We ask you a lot in the comments, like to let us know what you would like to learn, and we will answer them and oftentimes do a whole episode on it. But if you've got any ideas of guests that you think would be...
Yeah, somebody you'd love to hear from.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, let us know, because, we're always looking for guests and good people. And yeah. All right. Love you, brother.
Love you, man.
We'll see y'all next Monday. Bye,
All right.
Alice.
Bye.